Holy shit, it's Christmas, motherfuckers! Well, no, not really. It's Christmas Eve, technically. It's gonna be Christmas Eve proper in a couple of minutes in my time zone. But it's Demons from Outer Space motherfucking Christmas. Dylan, say hi. Say motherfucking Christmas.
This is the third or fourth motherfucking Christmas. How many of these have we done?
We didn't do one last year, so technically this is the third one, I think. I'm not sure, though.
Okay, cool. Motherfucking Christmas, Roman numeral 3.
I don't do well with knowing the history of our podcast, traditionally.
So this is DFOS, motherfucking Christmas, Roman numeral 3.
I dare you to ask me what episode number it is.
God, I don't even fucking. It's 90 something.
93. I think it's 90. I'm almost positive.
I'm fact checking you right now.
If I had a gun to my head, gun to my balls, and I said 93, I would expect to just get shot in the head. They'd leave my balls, thankfully.
It is episode 93.
Woo! My balls are safe. Great. So, Dylan, as we announced at the end of last week's episode for this motherfucking Christmas Demons from Outer Space, we are going to be reviewing 2 Christmas specials of TV shows that you and I fucking love. In this case, both cartoons, which was not necessarily specifically the idea. We could have done a sitcom or a hard crime drama, whatever you could have. Doctor Who, Sherlock, whatever. Everything has a Christmas special. The TV Christmas special is a pillar of American pop culture. And I feel like, despite how different the 2 specials we picked were, I think that they both reflect that, though, and they are both about that in some way. And turning the conventions of that on their head, while also commenting on the place that trope has in our society. So, with all of that philosophical stuff out of the way,
would you like to start with the family-friendly one or the not so family?
I actually think we should go. Let's do the dark one first, and then clean our palates out with the real Ghostbusters, because that's how I did it when I watched them. I watched them back to back last night when we were supposed to do this.
You watched the South Park one first.
I watched this out. Well, I hadn't seen that, so I was like, let me get this done, and then I can watch something I'm more familiar with and I don't have to pay as close attention to. So I watched the South Park one first, and I was like, wow, this is so wow. And then I was like, oh boy, all right. I'm really glad I saved the real Ghostbusters for after this, because man, I need to detox after that. Wow. So then I watched the real Ghostbusters. I was like, ooh, Peter's in a tutu. Thank God. Oh, there's still some sanity left in the world. So Dylan, why don't you start with leading the conversation, discussing the South Park Season 8 Christmas special, the Woodland Critters, whatever the hell the episode's actually called. So you asked me things, you asked me how I felt about things, and I will tell you, alright? Does that sound fair?
Alright. It is, as Bill was just saying, it is called Woodland Critter Christmas. It is the Christmas special for those of you who are perhaps not initiated with South Park. South Park actually, especially in the early days, have several very good Christmas episodes. In recent years, they've done episodes that are set at Christmas, but nothing really that's a Christmas special. But in the earlier seasons, there were quite a few Christmassy episodes. But Woodland Critter Christmas is really the one that I think it has stuck out to the fans the most. It's probably the most beloved. It's the seminal South Park Christmas episode, if you will.
Not Mr. Hanky.
No, Mr. Hanky's first introduction was the very first Christmas special they did, and it's fun. It's a fun concept. I don't think the episode really holds up that much, though. The first couple seasons of South Park, while enjoyable and funny, are don't have like nothing on like prime South Park, which is like, in my opinion, from like season 6 or 7 on to like 13, 14. Like that's really your best era of South Park, in my personal opinion. But yeah, so season 8 Christmas special. God, where to begin? Did you like it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't not watch a South. Okay, let me start over. I never watch a South Park episode and leave leave feeling I'm really mad that I watched that, or I wish I didn't waste my time watching that. I always go, man, I am really glad that I saw that through to the end, because those guys are really fucking clever. Oh god, I'm gonna have to remember how to put their names together in my head right now. Is it Michael Parker and Trace? No, okay, how do their names work?
Neither of them are Michaels. It's Trey Parker and Matt
Stone. Right, my bad. Okay, I'm sorry. It's late. I'm tired. They're really clever and really good writers. Every episode I've ever seen of South Park, I've always been, wow, that's really good social commentary. Or, oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. Just the absurdity of that. Just the fact that somebody decided to throw that together. My favorite episode of South Park, I could
probably count on one hand the episodes of South Park that I don't like, and that's out of 20 seasons of television. So.
My favorite episode of South Park is definitely the World of Warcraft one, because that was the one I watched and I felt the most connection to, because I was playing World of Warcraft at the time that came out. I played Warcraft when it was prime popularity back in the mid-2000s. And,
Closure to South Park anyway, because if people aren't aware, I'm of course a gigantic South Park fan.
Yeah.
I have every DVD.
All of you fuckers are. Everybody in the SOS, just huge South Park fans, and I was always the one guy that was like, I know some things about South Park. Like, I know some of the characters' names.
Every now and then I drop a South Park joke on a podcast, and Andres will laugh, and then we'll have to explain to Bill that it was a South Park thing, and he's like, "Oh, okay."
And it's not like I haven't seen South Park. It's not like I didn't grow up familiar with South Park. So, kind of like with the SOS. My friends always liked it. Like, I always hung out with people who watched and knew South Park, so I always saw it and was exposed to it through them. And at one point, I'm thinking, like, I don't know, when I got a little older, like in my early teens, I think I got a little bit into South Park during whatever season the Whale Horrors episode was. I watched a lot of episodes in that season.
13. That was season 13.
Whale Horrors is also a great episode because it's got a great Godzilla reference in it.
Yeah, it was good. Did you see the episode where the boys? This was also a season 13 episode where the boys were wrestlers.
I don't remember that one. That one doesn't jump out to me. I remember the one where Free Willy was on the moon or whatever. I remember that one.
That's from season 9.
Oh, okay. That's not from that season. I also remember, of course, the water park episode with the pee. Pretty
sure that. I'm fairly certain that that's 13.
Yeah, I think that 13. I watched a whole stretch of episodes in that season. Like, I was into South Park for a hot minute, and then I was just like, I need a break from this because this is really dark and fucked up. And that's the thing. That's where I'm ultimately building this whole rant to. South Park is not something I can consistently watch because it depresses me because of how much it makes me think about the world around me and the way we treat each other and the way we treat our society. And it's a very dark and very socially poignant show that it's also hilarious, and I think that that's why I'm like, I find this funny and I enjoy it and I think it's clever, but it depresses me to be exposed to this again and again and again.
It's a little too accurate for your taste, or
not even sure.
It's an odd thing to say because South Park is very surreal in its humor, but it's also
it's not realistic. I think that's why it's so disturbing, is that it's not realistic, but it's very close to our modern, to our society, to who we are as people. And I think that's why it's like that, is because, people think like, oh, you have to be realistic to be socially relevant and for people to relate to your material. No, because real life is fucking absurd. It's ludicrous. I think you and I, our common experience with G-Fest would be a good testament to that. Like, if you were gonna recount that experience to somebody, you wouldn't do it in like a gritty, like, realistic way. You would want to convey the lunacy and the absurdity of some of the things that happen along the way. And I think that South Park, in its attempt to capture the fucked up nature of the real world sometimes, and the hilarious hypocrisy and contradictions in the real world, I think you have to be absurd. So, I get it, I appreciate it, I'm really glad it exists, I just cannot watch it regularly, because I cry.
Alright. I should compile a list of, like, really good episodes and have you watch them at some point.
See, the thing is, I've probably seen them. I saw the one where the guy was, like, frozen in, like, 1994, and they unfroze him in, like, 1997. That one was fucking great.
That's an early one, too.
Yeah, that was a very early one.
I can't even tell you what season that was in, because, like, pre-season 7, I don't have them as memorized as I do afterwards because I haven't watched the early shit as much as I've watched the later shit. Because, like I said, from like 7 to like 13, 14 is like my sweet spot.
Yeah, I've also seen another one I remember very vividly is the one where the Family Guy writing room is dugongs and that push balls into like conveyor belts that come up with Family Guy scripts, and the boys team up with Bart Simpson to.
Have you seen the light? Have you seen the Lice episode?
The Lights episode?
No, Lice.
Lice episode. No, I haven't.
It's fucking genius.
But anyway, so I just wanted to establish our background in South Park, so that way we can contextualize this conversation a little bit, because this one, it's definitely prime. Like, I'm glad you picked it, because you're right. It's definitely in the prime run of South Park. Like, these guys are digging fucking deep. Like, they don't give a fuck about your comfort level or about what shouldn't be shown on television. They're like, we've got a fucked up story to tell, and we're gonna fucking do it straight.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to even. I'm supposed to be asking you questions about it and see how you responded, but it's kind of hard to even formulate questions.
Let's take us through the emotional experience of it. Like, let's start at the beginning. So I guess the first thing is it starts off with the tone of a very traditional Christmas special, which I think is interesting because, as opposed to the other one that we're going to talk about, you know, it has it much more overtly plays itself as like, oh, we're doing like a Grinch-esque kind of Christmas special where there's a wholesome sounding narrator who's telling us the story, and we watch the characters go through the story and kind of interact with the audience and the narrator as we all kind of learn about the meaning of Christmas. And that's basically the framework.
Ultimately, I think that's why it stands out above even the other really good South Park Christmas specials, such as Merry Christmas, Charlie Manson, or Red Sleigh Down.
I haven't seen that one. That's a great title, though. I might have to watch that just based on the title.
But I think that's one of the reasons that Woodland Critter Christmas stands out even amongst the South Park Christmas specials, which I enjoy all of, because it's the other ones are Christmas specials. They are Christmas specials that are fucked up because they're set in the South Park universe, and everything in the South Park universe is fucked up.
Right.
But this is a parody of a traditional Christmas special that goes to a fucked up place because of who the narrator turns out to be, which we can talk about that.
Which is probably it's the brilliant like hat trick. That's really like, this is why this is like this. And I thought, and when that happened, like, I was watching and my heart was pounding. I was like, oh my god, like, what the fuck is going on? And then they revealed that, and I was like, oh, alright, okay, good on you boys, like, we can all go home now, cool.
That was the point. That was the part that really elevated it, because everything up to that point had been like standard South Park fare, and then that was the moment when they pulled the rug out from under you and were like, "Here's the big reveal of the episode."
I would say that this was a good one for you to pick for that reason too, because I know South Park, I know all the tricks. So when I was watching it, I was just like, "All right, yeah, this is not." Like, I know that this is what South Park is like. I haven't seen it in so long that maybe I kind of didn't remember what it was really like to watch it. But then they revealed that, and I was like, oh, all right. But they did that on purpose and for a clever, fun reason. Great. So, awesome. I loved that part of it, too. So, before we could talk about the details of that, obviously, when we kind of talk about the important stuff before that. But I've heard it talked about before. You mentioned before it's one that's popular with the fans, and it's one that I've heard talked about with a lot of reverence by people. In videos and stuff, and in casual conversation. And people always bring up, like, it doesn't really feature the icons of Christmas, though, and that's what's really interesting about it, because it takes these original characters and kind of puts them into that mold.
Yeah, well, I mean, Santa Claus does pop up at the end, but
I feel like that's because he's like, what is this nonsense? Let's inject some real Christmas into this. I think that was kind of the I guess the thematic undertones of that really, really, talk about absurd and ludicrous, tossing these adjectives around. Like, that scene definitely deserved them more than any other. Ooh. But yeah. I stopped talking, and that's exactly when you went to drink, and I was like, fuck! I got nothing else to say.
gap in the audio there. So anyway, so it starts out like a normal Christmas special. We're introduced to Stan, who is referred to by the narrator as the boy in the red poofball hat. Much of it rhymes, by the way, which is even better. It's a bit susical.
Yeah, especially with the Woodland Critters names, which is one of those jokes that they have it go on for too long. Like, it happens, and you're like, oh, that's funny, okay, because all the animals are called, it's like Barry the bear, Porcupiney the porcupine. It's like, so yeah, it's the animal they are with Y at the end, and they keep going and going and introducing all the different critters.
Really stereotypical. Like, I could imagine there being a bear named Barry and like any number of things, but as it goes on from animal to animal, it becomes even more absurd. And at a point, it stops being funny, but then by the end, it circles back around to funny again. And I think when they get to when they get to Chickadee, the chickadee.
Yeah, that's fucking great. And then is Barry last? Because I think the fact that they end on a normal one's funny when you compare it to like Chickadee, the chickadee. That's really great.
Barry was first, but maybe not.
Oh, maybe I don't remember. It was so long ago now, like almost 24 hours. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those jokes that it goes in that kind of that arc of like 3 stages that you kind of people talk about it in, like when you're learning about writing comedy and comic timing. You like a joke starts off as funny and then it stops being funny to the audience and then they learn to laugh with it again at the end. Like it goes in that arc. And that's a perfect example of it. So I thought that was fun.
At a point, it becomes funny again just because of the absurdity of the fact that the joke is still going.
Precisely. That's exactly what that theory is expressing, and what I think that scene definitely evokes and succeeds at.
Yeah. And also just another great way to make it feel like a traditional Christmas special, because it really feels like you're watching something that Rankin has made until a certain point.
But at the same time, it's not like it starts off as the stereotypical Christmas special and there's nothing South Park about it, because Stan is still there and Stan is still Stan, and he's just that's Stan, right? That's his name.
Yes,
Stan. I got it right. Woo! I remember South Park characters' names. Great. But he's just being himself. Like he's not really about doing this. He's being dragged along by the story. He's not really into it, and he's very.
There are moments when he actively tries to defy the narrator.
Yeah, and then he just fucking teleports to where the next plot point is, and he's like, "What the fuck, man?" It's brilliant, and it's good that they picked Stan as the protagonist, because number one, Stan is my favorite of the kids, because he's the most, like, I feel he's the most reasonable.
Oh, by the way, should have said this at the beginning. Spoilers for Woodland Critter Christmas. All right, so
well, yeah, spoiler for both these cartoons, that one of which came out a couple years ago, one of which came out like almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, Stan and Kyle sort of go back and forth. They're both the voices of reason of the group, but every now and then one of them will go off and do something crazy, and then it's the other one's job to be like, dude, come on.
But Kyle, of course, in this one, is intentionally written as not the voice of reason by the actual narrator.
So I guess since we were sort of just going along like how the tone of the episode progresses, how did you feel when shit started to get real?
So, the first moment where shit really gets real is so Stan agrees, or he's basically forced by the enthusiasm and this creepy, cliche, Christmassy warmth of the Woodland Critters to kill the mountain lion who is preying upon their group, or has always preyed upon their group, preventing the birth of their Lord and Savior, who...
Well, the first thing that really sort of makes you go, well, this is kind of fucked up.
Was there something prior to that? Because the first thing that jumps out to me is the mountain lion thing. Because that was like, whoa, Jesus.
Well, that's the first time that they, like, ask him to go, like, do something, like, morally questionable. But it starts to get a little weird when you get to the point before that where they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, the porcupine's pregnant with animal Jesus. We need to build a manger. Like,
yeah, well, it's very culty. And that's obviously what they're trying to imply with that
like
line.
It's a very South Parky thing to do, but at the same time, it's the first point in the episode where you go.
I mean, they're always taking jabs at religion and mass kind of I almost said mass hysteria, but we'll get to that in the next thing we're going to talk about. But I don't know, like just those kind of like these things that people buy into in large groups, and mocking the bizarre fact that a large group of people buy into this, and that's sort of what the cultish nature of the Woodland Critters is supposed to be kind of representing, because you know they're stereotypical Christmassy kind of like just absolutely devoted to the purity of Christmas, you know, and that's charming for 2 seconds, and then after you live with it for 2 seconds, you're like, you need to fucking chill, man. It is just a day. Like, fuck me. Calm down. And that's very much... And they push that line way further than anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, so Stan is told to go kill the mountain lion.
Mm-hmm.
Which at first is, you know, like, whatever.
Well, hang on, but you know what else I like, though? Before they bring him to that dark, morally ambiguous place. When they ask him to do the smaller shit, like, first they ask him to build the manger, or there's something before that, I don't remember. Oh, no, they ask him to put the star on the tree.
Yeah, because they can't reach or whatever.
Right. And then he builds them the manger. He's not thrilled that he's being forced by these weird talking animals to do this stuff. But he's like,
I mean,
all
like,
right,
the first time he's like, all right, I'm putting a star on a tree, whatever, you know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like at first he's like, all right, I'm helping out these things, whatever. I'm doing my part for the Christmas spirit or whatever. And that's what makes Stan the perfect person to put in this situation, because he deep down, beneath all his cynicism and shit friends, he is a good guy, kind of. And that very much so comes out in this, especially with the mountain lion scene. So Dylan, what exactly goes down up on that icy hilltop?
I mean, it starts out pretty basic. You know, it's him going to kill a mountain lion. I mean, it's not any different than any other thing that you've ever seen where a character is given a quest to go kill a thing. It's sort of go kill the witch Dorothy in a way. But but of course South Park, with their genius way of pulling the rug out from under you right after he tricks the mountain lion into falling to her death. The 3 baby mountain lion cubs come out of the cave.
And of course, their voices are just like they're actual children. Like, they're just real children voicing these baby mountain lions, like talking about, oh my god, mommy's dead. Like, holy shit, this is awful. We're gonna die. And Stan is like, are you fucking kidding me? This is so fucked. What the hell, man? And it, again, perfect character to put in that situation, because that's exactly how I was feeling at that moment. I was like, oh my god, really? Like, fuck me. Because I was so with this a second ago. Like, I was like, yeah, he did it. What a clever motherfucker. Now what's going to happen? And it's just, oh, sadness, depression, just poor kitty cats. Oh.
I love it whenever they get actual children to do voices on South Park.
Man, it fucked me up. Especially because for the Woodland Critters, they all sound like they could be real, like, Christmas special characters. Like, they could come out right out of a Rankin Bass special. And that's what helps making them more creepy.
They sound like Rudolph might have run into them on his way to save Baby New Year. Like,
for sure. Yeah, definitely.
They're like, oh, Stan, we need you to fucking kill a mountain lion, huh? Like,
and then get on a whale's back that has a clock in its tail or whatever those weird fucking hallucinogenic things were about.
Yeah.
They were,
so
those
Stan's
movies
like,
were fucking trippy nightmares, dude. Just awful, just nightmares for children.
So Stan's feeling kind of bad because he just killed the mountain lion or whatever. But then he's sort of forced to. Well, no. What happens is he comes back and he tells the Woodland Critters that he has killed the mountain lion, and this is when the real shoe drops.
Then the fucking rug comes out from under us again. Oh, they just keep tripping me, and it hurts, man. It hurts me emotionally and physically. Like, I'm starting to bleed.
That's the structure of this episode. It just gets progressively more fucked up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So at this point, we learn that this is becoming a common theme amongst things that I choose to review on DFOS. But at some point, we find out. At some point, we discover that the Woodland Critters are in fact Satanists.
Oh God, this is really telling us some deeper shit here, for sure. Yeah, no, they certainly are.
And the child that Stan has just helped bring into the world is not just the savior of the woodland critters. He is in fact the Antichrist of biblical description.
Right. And what I found very interesting about all this is that the relationship works in such a way where the mountain lions are actually like the heavenly angel creatures because they keep all the evil, horrible woodland critters in check, and the woodland critters are these horrible Satanist motherfuckers. Literally, they fuck each other, and there's an actual blood orgy that they show. My fucking God, that was the thing where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I sitting here in my room watching a weird Christmas special where animals are fucking each other in blood to review on a podcast after sacrificing one of their own? Like, Jesus.
That's the best scene in the whole Christmas special, when they're like, let's sacrifice Rabbity to Satan, and then Rabbity's like, yeah, sacrifice me, and then they fucking like tear him to pieces, and then they're like, blood orgy, and like there's a fucking like raccoon fucking a deer or something,
they're
and like
all
it's
fucking each other. It's crazy.
Just standing there like, fuck.
Exactly. And again, perfect character to put in that situation, because that's what I was doing. I was like, what? Because it's not supposed to be like the people, like the showrunners are like, well, this is normal. Like what we're showing you, like this shouldn't bother you. No, they're very much like, we want to bother you. We want to get under your skin and be like, yeah, we're doing this.
Satanic woodland critters, away.
And I mean, listen, that scene is probably the scene that makes me go, probably not going to rewatch that tomorrow. Like, I'm probably not going to watch this again anytime soon because, man, I do not need to see that again. But in the moment, like, very, very impactful, very emotionally resonant.
I watch it once a year.
I bet you do. I bet you watch it once a night, motherfucker, before you go to bed.
As the song in the end credits points out, it's once a year. Anyway,
thank Christ.
Brilliant parody writing from the South Park boys again. That's sort of their unsung talent, is writing parody songs. Like,
yeah,
fucking.
Well, they made a musical, dude, Book of Mormon, and I mean that was popular.
I'm kind of pissed at Phil Collins for winning for that Tarzan score, because damn it should have went to Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Anyway, what the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, so the animals are Satanists.
Yep.
Stan goes home after witnessing the blood orgy. And maybe joining in. We never see. But he goes home, and
could have happened off screen.
Then we reach the point in the story where he's like really feeling weird about all this shit that's been going down. He's just sort of sitting in his room like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck have I done? What the fuck in general? And then that's when the narrator begins saying like, and then the little boy in the red poofball hat was like, I know, I'll go back to the forest and straighten it all out. And Stan was like, no, I'm not going back there. And like the narrator pretty much has to force him to go. And once you know later on in the episode who the narrator is,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It makes so much sense. It's one reason you probably should watch this episode again, Bill. Not right now, but like at some point, because repeat viewing.
I need time to detox.
Knowing who the narrator is on repeat viewings actually does sort of enhance the episode a little bit, because even though you already know what the reveal is, it just puts everything you're seeing into context. Kind of like watching Planet of the Apes, you know what's coming at the end, but it just gives everything a little bit more context.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. And and that's again, it's a moment where they go, well, here's what's going on, and you're like, oh, all right, I see what you're doing. They let you in that moment, and they're like, this is why this is like this. We're not like this. Like we're just telling we're recounting a tale to you based on one of our characters. So we are like this, but we're blaming it on. Should we just say who the character is at this point? I mean,
yeah, I think we're dancing around it a bit.
I think it's also pretty obvious. Like, it's fucking Cartman. Like, he's just. And I love how well dressed he is. Like, he's got his nice Christmas sweater on. He's got his nice combed hair. Like, he is into the spirit of the season, man.
I love it anytime Cartman takes off his regular clothes and like dresses all like wholesome, because it's just the best. Yeah, right. Anytime Cartman's trying to act wholesome is just brilliant. So yeah, Cartman is apparently all the children wrote Christmas stories and they're reading to them at each other. It's a thing they're doing because Mr. Garrison doesn't want to actually take time to teach. It's a recurring in the show. So they're doing that, and like this is Cartman's story. This tale of satanic animals is Cartman's story.
Makes a lot of sense.
Why, you may ask, would Cartman write such a story? Well, that becomes apparent when we get a little further on into the plot. So Stan is forced by the narrator to go back into the forest and confront the woodland critters.
Literally, the narrator is like, if you don't, there's literally nothing that we can do. Like, this is it. Like, there's nothing else that's gonna happen. Like, you're just gonna sit there watching TV for the rest of eternity, and I'm just gonna be yelling at you. Like, that's all we're gonna have. And he's like, all right, and he does it. It's great.
The narrator's basically going, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. So Stan, exactly. He goes to the woodlands to meet with the critters and confront them, and his plan is to take down the manger that he built. He does not succeed because, as Barry puts it, well, gee, Stan, we'd have to use our evil satanic powers on you. And then,
which is great, because he's a fucking bear. He could just attack Stan and it'd be done. He's a child. Like, he could just eat him. But no, he's like, no, we have to light the ground on fire with bad CGI. But I mean, I don't mean bad CGI in like a term like, oh, fuck it, it's bad. In terms of like, it's like very intentionally like cartoony, like weird looking.
It fits in pretty well with the animation style of South Park.
Of course, yeah, like that very like kind of thrown together like, you know,
every now and
sketchy look.
Every now and then in South Park, they throw in something that's like some like PS1 level graphics, and it actually looks pretty cool set against the cardboard cutout art style.
Yeah, I love it when they're like, we literally just took Osama bin Laden's actual head out of a picture and we just put it on a stick figure. Like that's what we're about.
Yeah, it's great. But the Mel Gibson one's also genius. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah, I've seen the clip. Yeah.
Yeah, The Passion of the Jew. That episode is called. Anyway, what was I saying? So they use their evil satanic powers on them. It's like a scene out of the fucking Omen. Like their eyes are glowing red, the ground lights on fire.
I was reminded of Godzilla versus Megalon.
There's some crows coming out of the sky and attacking Stan, and then a Cerberus with only two heads. So I guess technically a Diosculus, because that's what Ray Harryhausen called the one in that movie, pops up and attacks him, and like so Stan's just like, fuck this, and he runs out of the woods. And the reason I say it's like something out of the Omen is that also they do that like people chanting in Latin as the background music, you know? Like, but before all that happened, I think it was right before that happened, they're basically asking Stan if he happens to be an unbaptized heathen, because they need they need a human body to transfer the Antichrist into, and he's like, no, I've been baptized and my family's Christian, and they're like, oh. So, which is also hilarious. Anytime they're not able to carry out one of their evil schemes, they don't react like some mustache-twirling villain out of a movie. They react like fucking Rudolph when he finds out that the Bumble got whatever. Like, he's just like, oh man, now we'll never get to have our Christmas. Like,
yeah, well, they very much so are like, it's the death of Christmas. Like, they're characters that are like, they play them as like trying to maintain the purity of Christmas, and they're like guilt-tripping Stan into doing what they need them to do, or what they need him to do, is part of that, where he's the human who stumbles across the Christmas magic and is helping it along, you know? Like, it's great. But it's crazy how dense this episode is, too. Like, it just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah,
then the fucking mountain lion cubs are learning abortions. Like, what the... Jesus!
Yeah, so basically Stan has to teach the mountain lion cubs how to perform an abortion, because they aren't big enough to kill Porcupiney the porcupine before she gives birth. However, if they can learn to perform an abortion, then they can give her an abortion, and thus the Antichrist will never be born.
I feel a natural evolution.
So we have one of the greatest homages in cinematic history of the mountain lion cubs in an abortion clinic, just watching the practitioner, I guess you would call him, the abortionist, whatever you call.
I was going to say the abortionist, the illusionist. Who knows?
Performing one abortion after the other to the tune of some delightful Christmas music. It's a beautiful scene. You know, it really warms the
especially when you have like the mountain lion cubs like, come watch little mountain lion cubs, and they're like just looking over, like it's like a scene out of The Lion King, like they're watching in wonder as the doctor performs the abortion.
Yeah, they're cute as fuck too. These mountain lion cubs. Let's just throw that out there.
And again, the voices help too. They're real kids. It's crazy.
They're legit cute, not like the woodland critters, which have that creepy sort of Rankin Bass cute going on. These are legit cute critters.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how I meant to mention this before, but they play it like a real kind of natural relationship where the predators are kind of the more noble, like better serving to the environment kind of species, while the fucking innocent herbivores or whatever, they're kind of these dirty, like just sex crazed, just mean, like just dirty, like just horrible creatures, you know? Like rabbits. Yeah. Like they're not like these cute, fluffy, like they're horrible. Like they're just like they're fucking and fucking sending their spawn everywhere and eating anything they can and each other and just fighting, and it's horrible. But
yeah,
bears are horrible. But like a big predatory cat, like they're like, oh, I gotta watch my kids. Like I can't be like out fucking and just raping and whatever. I have to watch my kids.
And of course, anybody who's as big of a Louis C.K. fan as we are knows the dirty truth about deer. Those fucking guys. But anyway, yes. So they go and they learn to do abortions, and then they go back into the woods.
The human teaches the mountain lion cubs how to perform a complex medical procedure.
Yes. Meanwhile, the woodland critters have approached Kyle. They found him sort of sitting, sort of depressed, because there's a running theme in the show where he gets kind of depressed around Christmas time because he has to celebrate fucking Hanukkah, and who wants that? But
oh right, yeah. There's again, that's biting social commentary about the relationship between Christmas and other holidays or around this time of year, and like in school and everything, and the social stigma that's attached to, oh, I don't celebrate Christmas, but it's like, well, everybody kind of celebrates Christmas though.
Like, let's be real, Bill. I mean, let's just real talk for a second. I don't think there's any debating, is there, that Christmas is just objectively a better holiday. I mean, really.
Well, so it's certainly the more dominating. It's certainly the more dominating personality in terms of the holiday mix of all the different stuff that's going on. Like, I mean, Kwanzaa certainly isn't fighting for the top.
So you just can't help but feel kind of sad for Kyle and his poor Hanukkah.
Well, you definitely. Again, it's a very like dark, but accurate representation of a social stigma, and I think that's what makes the show so clever, but also at some point so depressing. Like when the Satanistic animals decide to take advantage of this and stick their fucking Satanist their Satan spawn into his fucking body so he can control the world.
But anyway, so they find Kyle. They find out that he's Jewish and therefore non-baptized, and also therefore a heathen under the Christian definition. So they're like, cool, he can be the Antichrist. So they take Kyle into the woods. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. All right, so Stan and the lion cubs, they arrive in the forest after having learned how to perform abortions. And I didn't want to turn this into a plot synopsis, but you kind of have to.
Well, there's a lot to unpack in here. Like that's what I was saying before. There's a lot going on. So let's go. We're almost 40 in. So why don't we start to wrap it up so we can move on to the other one. If
you're beside yourself right now by how fucked up the series of events has been, don't worry, we're near the end now. So
that's how I felt watching it. I was like, I'm so wrapped up in this complex web of narrative, but man, how long is this? And I was like halfway through, and I was like, God damn, this is still. It's still building. It's not even done yet. Like, oh my God, where are they going to go? And they took us to... Oh,
and you probably haven't seen the abortions at that point.
I never thought I would say, oh my God, I watched more than one abortion on this cartoon today, but I saw so many abortions. Like, my God. And the one and the ones that took place in the abortion clinic were not even the worst one. Like, the one later was so much worse.
South Park and DBZ Abridged are the only two shows that have ever made me root for an abortion. Abort that fetus. But so Stan and the mountain lion cubs, they return to the woods, but they discover that they are, alas, too late for Porcupiney. The porcupine has already given birth to the Antichrist, who's this weird little like gargoyle-looking creature in a manger going.
But it's just a baby porcupine with some horns on it. Like it's pretty much that's pretty much the pathetic reality of it. Oh, there's one joke we forgot to mention that I fucking loved too, where they're talking about why it should have been obvious to Stan that they were Satanists, because they're like, do you really think that God would have fucked a porcupine? No, only the devil would be that fucked up.
Yeah, that was good.
Like that is an awesome, like hilarious line. But anyway,
episode to watch in context with the rest of South Park, because in the rest of South Park, Satan is is like a character that pops up every now and then, and he's really not that bad of a guy. But, so you watch this episode, and it's more of your traditional like.
Yeah, but this didn't really happen though. This is Cartman's story.
Yeah. Well, that's why it gets away with it. I remember the first time I saw this episode, it was kind of weird to me until they revealed that this was all a tale that Cartman had spun, and then I was like, oh, all right, that makes more sense.
So, and I think that they wait to do the really nonsensical, like, if this was really happening, this would kind of be a game breaker type of thing, until after we know that Cartman's telling the story. So, we get the stuff of, like, Kyle, like, agreeing to become the Satan spawn, and,
Yeah. So Santa Claus shows up and he saves Kyle from being possessed by the Antichrist. He also
doesn't. No, he does not. He
gets him off of the fucking altar where they had him tied up and shit.
Oh, right, because they were gonna force. Okay, my bad. I jumped ahead.
Like Santa Claus starts like mowing down woodland critters with a shotgun. It's fucking great.
Yeah, it's very satisfying, even though it's incredibly fucked because you just have Santa Claus just blowing these animals' heads off with a shotgun.
Santa Claus is a badass motherfucker in South Park.
I love that he saves Barry for last.
You should also watch Red Sleigh Down. It's the other one that I was tempted to make you watch for this episode, but then I was like, nah, if I'm going to do a South Park Christmas episode, it has to be Woodland Critter Christmas. But Red Sleigh Down, I really love that one too, and you get to see Santa be a badass in that too. But it's the kind of badass where like he gets captured by terrorists and tortured for half of the episode, and it's just like, fuck you guys.
That's fucking great. I definitely have to see that. I think I've heard about that one too.
And then Jesus comes in with like dual wielding Uzis and like saves him. But anyway,
oh my god, that's so dope. All right, yeah, I definitely have to watch that one.
So they save Kyle from being forcibly impregnated with the Antichrist, but then Kyle's not like, no, I want to become the Antichrist so that I can make the world better for the Jews. And this was the point in the episode where I was like, that's out of character, and then they reveal that it's actually just a story being told by Cartman.
Oh, that's when they reveal it?
Yeah.
I thought they revealed it before that, and then...
Right there near the end, after Kyle's like, no, I want to become the Antichrist, then you switch over to the real world, and real Kyle is like, fuck you, Cartman. And
right, because he's offended, and then, what's the teacher's name? Mr. Garrison?
Mr. Garrison even is like, okay, Eric, I think you need to stop telling the story. But then he gets to tell the rest of the story anyway, because all the other kids
Because everybody wants to know what's going on, and that's true, too, because it's like, if I was in that classroom, I would be like, dude, what the fuck happens after that? Like, where does that go? Like, you could say anything you want about how horrible of a human being Cartman is, but my god, can he weave a fucking story? Like, my god, like, just weave a fascinating narrative.
The boy can spin a yarn. That is certainly true.
So true. Great.
Kyle was like, there's no point. We all know what's going to happen. He's just going to have Santa Claus kill me. And then Cartman's like, that's not what happens at all. So Kyle agrees to let Cartman finish the story because if he doesn't, the rest of the classmates will hate him forever. So Cartman proceeds.
Which again, that's great given the social stigma that they are trying to make fun of with him in terms of, you know, that's so good. I love it. It's so clever. It's dark but accurate and funny.
So Kyle allows Cartman to continue with the story. So we go back to Cartman's imagination where Kyle is now infused with the Antichrist and he has all this demonic power and it's the end of the world and shit and it's looking pretty fucking grim. But then
Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
But then we have one of those stereotypical moments where the person who has just ingested all this evil power is suddenly like, wait, I don't like how this feels. And so Kyle's basically like, that was wrong, man. I don't want to be the Antichrist anymore. So I don't
know who says it, if it's Santa or Stan, but they're like, no fucking shit. Like, because Kyle's like, this doesn't feel good. And they're like, well, it's the fucking power of Satan. Like, what did you think it was going to feel like?
So Santa Claus is basically like, I'm sorry, Kyle, but I'm going to have to blow your goddamn head off. But then Stan's like, no, there is another way. And so the way this episode ends is in order to save Kyle from being the Antichrist forever, the Woodland Critter, no, not the Woodland Critters, the Mountain Lion Cubs have to give Kyle an abortion and remove the tiny Antichrist from his anus.
See, that's, again, if that had happened before they revealed that Cartman was telling the story, I would have been like, oh, that's so unnecessary and unclever. But I think it's only justified because at that point we know it's Cartman, and that's what has to happen to Kyle in that instance. Like, Cartman has to do something really fucked up to him for no reason because he just doesn't like the fact that he's a Jew. So, great.
But Cartman's smart. See, he knows that just having Kyle killed in the story wouldn't quite accomplish what he wants. Instead, he has to have Kyle learn a lesson about the evils of his Judaism. So,
as well as also be embarrassed and put in a gay situation, and he's pregnant and he's aborted and he's fucking ass is bleeding. He's got a mountain lion biting in his asshole. I mean, one issue I will bring up is that I thought it was unclear that he was actually impregnated with the satanic fetus. I thought that he just absorbed the power and the fetus just didn't have any power then and it was just dead or whatever. I didn't think that the pregnancy transferred to him.
Apparently becoming the Antichrist involves a satanic butt plug of sorts where the tiny Antichrist baby wedges itself in your asshole.
I guess that's where your Satan power control buttons are. That's where the control room is.
See, he should have chosen Mr. Slave as his vessel. He would have had a lot more room. But anyway, they give Kyle the abortion, and Kyle's back to normal, and everybody has a wonderful Christmas. The end. So, Bill, what'd you think?
Yeah, it's good. Nah, it's very clever. It's a emotional roller coaster. There's something funny in every minute. It's great. It's great social satire. It's funny shit. It's good. It's good Christmas. It's a good Christmas special. It does good stuff with the tropes that we are ultimately paying reference to with this episode. And I think that it was a good choice for this. So good on you, D, and good on those guys whose names I can't remember how to put them together for making it. It's great. It's good stuff.
We should talk some more South Park in the future because I enjoy your genuine horror at these things that I'm do at this point.
See, maybe we should do like every episode we review a South Park episode. We also review an episode of The Real Ghostbusters. Like that's how you can get me to do it. You can get me through South Park. I'll get you through the entire Real Ghostbusters catalog. There's probably about the same amount of each, but there's a lot more bad Real Ghostbusters. So I ultimately don't want to do that.
I looked at the episode count on the seasons, and like most of the Real Ghostbusters seasons are really short. But then there's one that's just like fucking over 100 episodes.
Well, thank God the one that's really long is also mostly good. That season 2 is the longest season. It's like 70 episodes. But it's the good stuff of that show. So do you want to move on then to The Real Ghostbusters Xmas Marks the Spot, or is there anything else you wanted to add about Woodland Critters?
One last bit of Woodland Critters Christmas-related trivia to leave the audience with. The Woodland Critters, of course, fan favorites after this episode, would go on to be featured heavily in all of the South Park's intro animations for the series, and also make a return appearance. And also make a return appearance in the season 11 3-part epic episode Imagination Land. So
that's cool. Yeah, that was a fucking huge deal when that first came out.
It was supposed to be the second South Park theatrical movie, and then that fell through for some reason. And they were like, "We got to turn this into like a huge episode." So it just became a massive 3-part episode on television. That was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I wish it had been released theatrically like it was supposed to be, but later on we got a DVD where it was like theatrical and shit, so it's fine.
Yeah, South Park continues to be a big event, man. People give a shit, even now. I would say it's maybe not at its most popular right now, but it definitely.
Yeah, well, a lot of people were let down with season 20, to be honest. But at the same time, member berries are now like a major part of the public lexicon. Like people wandering going, "Remember Star Wars? Remember the Tanner Force?" So even when South Park has a season that people think is like weaker than others, it still manages to like influence pop culture in a big way.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about it that is so. It's fun. It makes it unique because it just doesn't give a fuck. They will take a fucking shot at anyone and anything, and I think that's why they will continue to be relevant long beyond even. Like, I think it's why they've managed to kind of outdo The Simpsons and Family Guy because they don't get samey, or if they do, they don't stay samey for long because they don't have to abide by the same kind of rigorous kind of structure and guidelines of a big network, and they're not primed. South Park's not prime time, right? I mean, it's still like fucking 8:30 on Comedy Central, right?
It's like a Wednesday night. Yeah, they make fun of everybody, man. And unfortunately, that's why we lost the character of Chef, who was a beloved character, because, Isaac Hayes was fine when South Park made fun of, like, Mormonism and shit, but when they did the same fucking thing to Scientology, he was like, I'm out!
Oh, because he was a Scientologist.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you'd be it's surprising that doesn't happen more often. But, I mean, it's weird that it took that kind of shot. Meanwhile, it's like, Jesus is wielding dual Uzis, ugh.
Yeah. Religious people are like most religious people, except for Islam, because that was a big deal a few seasons ago. But but like as far as Christianity is concerned, they'll be outraged over a thing for a while and they'll just move on. Like South Park used to be the devil, and now nobody gives a shit anymore. I remember when I was a child, like the big thing was like these Harry Potter books are teaching kids to be witches, and now nobody talks about that anymore. So people move on. But Scientology is especially against criticism of any kind. So
right. Yeah, no. I think that's what will keep them relevant and keep them. I mean, the more controversy they stir up, the more they'll be in the news. I mean, it's the best. No publicity is bad publicity. I'm sure they would agree. All right, so taking a total 180 turn, why don't we move over to The Real Ghostbusters season 1? I think it's episode 12 or 13. One of those two. Xmas marks.
It's 13. It's the very last episode of the season.
Okay. Xmas marks the spot. Obviously, which
is a common theme amongst these two Christmas specials we picked. They're both at the end of their season.
Wow, yeah, definitely. Probably it's not that weird. I mean, it's Christmas, and obviously it's a new year, so it makes sense that that's the end of a season. And I don't know about South Park, but The Real Ghostbusters picked up, like, only a couple weeks afterwards. Like, they were back really quick. And that's why season 2 was so long.
South Park's a bit more spread out than that, especially now because they do much shorter runs now. Like each season of South Park since season 17 is only like 10 episodes long, so they're only here for like a block in the fall and then they go away. Because back in the day they used to produce like 15 episode seasons and they would take like a little break in the middle. Then it went down to 14 and now they just do the 10. I think it's so that they can stay sane. Also, they were doing other shit with like the Book of Mormon and whatnot. So
I mean, I don't mind a short season of a TV show. It makes the story. It forces the story to be tighter, especially if it's a season long thing. But also, just that you're getting the 10 best that they came up with, and for a show like South Park, I'm sure that's not maybe as much of a problem because again, they can kind of do whatever the fuck they want. So whatever they do is usually at least somewhat unique and clever. But when you've got a show like The Real Ghostbusters, I think a shorter season is beneficial. Because doing a really good, hard-hitting, clever episode of this show, you've got to work around a lot of structure, a lot of network guidelines, and also the fact that this is a kid's show.
Yeah,
I imagine it's a Saturday morning cartoon, so it's not the same kind of freedom and the same kind of open, like you can tell any kind of stories you want as a South Park.
Yeah. I imagine, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, because I've only seen like 4 episodes of The Real Ghostbusters in my life. Like, I've seen the 2 episodes that are on my DVDs for the movies. Mm-hmm. I've seen the episode that we watched in July, and now
which is the first episode ever of the show.
Yeah, so I'm not intimately familiar with The Real Ghostbusters as you are.
I've seen all of the good stuff. So the first 2 seasons, once Cooley Ape started playing Venkman, I was out.
Okay, but anyway, I imagine that it's like a lot of kids' cartoons. It's a whole lot of wading through crappy episodes to get to like the golden nuggets in there.
Well, like South Park in a way, there's always a good moment. Because one of the nice things about The Real Ghostbusters, as opposed to other kids shows, was that it's adapted from a franchise that was not a kids thing initially. It was an adult comedy that was very popular with kids because it made a lot of use of special effects and was kind of the first really popular superhero thing in the 80s. In a way, it's not traditional superhero, but it's that same genre. So when the writers sat down to do the cartoon, a lot of them were fans of the movie and fans of those comedians. So they felt that they had a lot of responsibility to live up to the comedic reputation of those actors in that movie. So I think there's a lot more effort in the humor than a lot of Saturday morning cartoons, especially at the time, but I would say even now, there's a lot more care and detail put into the jokes and the timing, and the actors feel like they've got a little bit more to work with because the humor is a bit more dialogue-based, and it's a lot more about delivery and about bantering off of each other than it is about, like, you know, oh, look, Ray fell off a fucking fire escape into a dumpster. How funny. I think the biggest thing you get with that in the real Ghostbusters is Slimer. Slimer is your traditional Saturday morning cartoon element, amidst all of the more traditional humor. Anyway, so D, why don't we get into this proper then? So, not being very familiar with the show, but knowing a bit about it, and obviously you're a fan of the franchise. Did you like it?
Yeah, you were just talking about Slimer. One thing I wish this show did, this is just a general thing about the entirety of the series, not even just about this episode, but I wish Slimer, I'm all right with him being a normal comedic element of the show, but I wish he was a bit more like he was in the movies, in that I wish he was a bit more like mischievous and less dumb. I wish he wasn't
less of a fucking idiot.
I wish he wasn't the Ghostbusters Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and he is, and he becomes that very quickly. Now, one thing is that the episodes were aired out of order in terms of how they were made, and that's very obvious when you look at the jumps in the animation quality.
That's a common thing with children's cartoons.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up with Slimer is because the earlier ones, the ones with the bigger budget, you can tell, with the better animation, the ones that they made first, are the ones where he looks a lot more like he did in the movie, and this episode is one of those. I think he looks a lot more like he did in the movie than he does later. Like, they make him look a lot goofier and simplify the lines a lot more later on, but they make him look a little bit more kind of misshapen and ugly as he was in the movie. But more to the point, yeah, there is a bit more of that mischievous side early on. Not so much in this one, but it's very prevalent in other episodes that were made around the same time as this one. Maybe not shown around the same time, but made. And it's always nice to see. Because the one thing that is consistent about it is the way Venkman feels about him. Because Venkman fucking hates him.
Yeah, I just wish that was more justified. I could watch hours of this show if it was Slimer being the Bugs Bunny to Venkman's Fudd. Like,
yeah, it's so, and it's great too because Peter's voice kind of sounds like Elmer Fudd sometimes. It's great, and it's more justified at points. And I mean, because it seems like Slimer largely does it by accident. Like, largely will bump into him or just get too ramped up and eating to think about maybe the repercussions of how much he's eating. And then Peter just flies off the handle because he's he's an over-the-top guy and he gets pissed off easily. And he's also the leader of the team, so he thinks he can do whatever he wants. But no, I totally agree. And there's a lot more of that early on, like I said. But this being an episode of just a regular episode of this show that happens to be the Christmas episode, it does very neatly fit into the formula. How did that play for you? Did you think it was like, oh, okay, I get this, I've watched Saturday morning cartoons, or did what the individual story had? I'm sorry, I'm tired. I'm losing my words. What it offered complement the structure well. How'd you feel about that?
I felt like it was handled pretty well. I mean, it's much more of a traditional Christmas special than the last thing we were just talking about. But yeah, I think it did. I think it was a clever way to tell a Christmas story in the Ghostbusters universe.
Yeah, that's what I love about it.
There are a few little logical questions, but other than that,
oh yeah, definitely. We can get into that. But speaking of this being their universe, how'd you feel about the consistency of the characters from the movie?
I felt for the most part that everybody was pretty much like their movie counterparts. Again, I haven't seen a whole lot of this show, so it's hard for me to like pick out like what the character differences might be. But from what I've seen, they all
largely hair.
Yeah. On the one hand, it was a little weird with the Bill Murray character in this episode, because you could have never pulled that in live action. I could never see Bill Murray pretending to hate Christmas and take it seriously.
This came out, I believe, in '86. So when I was watching this, I was like, wait, when did this come out? Because are they directly trying to tie this in with Scrooge? Because since we haven't really talked about it yet, the Christmas special element of this is that the Ghostbusters are upstate. They're trying to get home. It's Christmas Eve. They just came back from a botched job where they blew up a house. Or no, they didn't blow up a house. They singed somebody's cat with their proton stream, and they got kicked out. So they're on their way back. They're all pissed off, except for Peter. He doesn't really care because he doesn't really care about Christmas. So he doesn't really mind working on Christmas Eve, but they're all really pissed about it. And then, very coincidentally, they get lost. They veer off the road. Or they run out of gas, I think? I don't remember. Something happens. They run into car trouble. They go off.
They go through some kind of a time hole.
Yeah,
they wind up in.
They describe it as a disturbance that they pass through, and they wind up in an old-timey town. But they don't realize that they've passed through some kind of portal until much later.
I was expecting there to be an explanation for it. I was expecting there to be some sort of like an evil like time ghost who's caused to go back in time.
It's very subtle, though, and that's what I thought was a problem, but maybe not. Because the idea is supposed to be that the portal is created because in Ghostbusters, like, everything is, like, it operates on this, like, thought-based, like, ethereal, like, the ghosts and all the monsters and all of the spectral disturbances are, like, they're motivated by psychic disturbance, by psychic turbulence, so the idea seems to be that because Peter was all down on Christmas near this portal, it decided to transport them to, pin drops, Victorian London on Christmas Eve, the night Scrooge was visited by the three ghosts, by the three spirits of Christmas past, present, and future.
Which apparently is a real event that happened in this universe.
Yeah, so that's the thing.
Odd, because later on they reference the fact that it's also a story in this universe.
That's the weird thing, because they don't mention the fact that it's just a story until way later. But they don't even put together that they just went into Scrooge's story until, again, way later, or the fact that they even time traveled. Did that bug you? The fact that everybody in this is kind of an idiot? Because I think it's done intentionally. I think it's done intentionally, and I think it's fun.
A little bit. It did bother me a little bit, just because they're not fucking idiots. Like, you watch the movies, and I mean, yeah, they do some dopey shit from time to time, but at the end of the day, they're still scientists, damn it. Like,
but it seems more like their personality quirks get in the way of their intelligence.
I mean, Ray and Venkman, sure, I can buy it with to an extent, and fucking Winston, because he's just there to be black anyway. But
yeah, especially early on in this show. Like, he's just the sassy black man. Like, it's kind of all they relegated him to, unfortunately. He gets better later. He gets some cool shit to do later.
You know, Ghostbusters 3, Ernie's Gotta Eat. But anyway,
he wanted to voice Winston in the show, and they wouldn't let him. They wanted Arsenio Hall to do it.
Their voices aren't even that dissimilar, I don't think. But anyway,
yeah, it's crazy.
That's nice. But Egon should have noticed. Come on, Egon.
He did at first, and then he was like, whatever. Like, he was like, something about that felt oddly familiar. But I think the best part of all...
Is he blonde, Bill?
Yeah,
why is he blonde?
Oh, I mean, I can tell you why. I mean, it's very simple. They didn't have the rights to use the likenesses of the actors, so they used that as an opportunity to make four very...
He still wouldn't have looked like the real guy, because he's a fucking cartoon. My question is...
But I was getting to that. They used that as an excuse to make four very distinct character models that would be easier to tell apart.
It's still the hairstyle and everything, and I think
that's harder to pull off in a cartoon, though. That's what I'm saying. It was easier to distinguish them with those character traits. And one thing I love about this show.
This is one reason I can never get into the show, because I watched those 2 episodes that are included on my movie DVDs, and I was like, why do they all look different? Why is it different?
It really bothered me, because I also watched a couple episodes that were on the Ghostbusters 2 DVD when I was younger, and it bugged me too. But watching the show, binging it, and getting into it hardcore, and learning some of the background about it, I think that they did it for a good reason, and I think it kind of pays off, because... this is not the movie universe. it's a cartoon adaptation of the same concept. And that's what I think works so well about it, is it's a good cartoon about this concept first before it's the movie as a cartoon every week. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it really succeeds. And I think that this episode, perhaps maybe more than a lot of others, is really good at being a Ghostbusters cartoon. And doing all the fun and crazy stuff that entails, while still also being a good adaptation, but also being a good Christmas special in this case. I fucking love... So we can talk about the illogical nature of them going back in time and the fact that they don't put it together quickly all night, but I just love that. The Ghostbusters bust the 3 ghosts of Christmas. That's fucking great and genius. And why I picked this episode for us to talk about it, and why I think it's so just hysterical.
That's why I said earlier I think it was a really clever way to tell a Christmas story in the Ghostbusters universe, because that concept is pretty good.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question regarding just the show in general.
Go ahead.
Because obviously I'm not as familiar with this as you were with South Park, so it's a bit of a different experience. That first episode that we watched in July, the very first episode, is that a good episode?
It's okay.
Because due to circumstances, I don't remember any of it.
It's okay. The animation is way better than the story, but that's what saves it. It's beautifully animated. It's some of the best animation the show has. There's some good action in it, especially towards the end. All of the Ghostbusters are on point. The thing is, it focuses so much on those fucking shit other ghosts that are like going around pretending to be Ghostbusters. It's hard. It's awful.
Yeah,
they're terrible characters.
For anybody who doesn't know, listening to this video, that was supposed to be an episode of Through the Shot Glass, and we never posted it for the same reason that I can't remember it. Everybody got way too drunk.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so short, and there were so many technical difficulties. It started raining at one point. The mailman showed up. It was crazy.
There were so many people in the video, you would think it was directed by Roland Emmerich. Like, the mailman showed up at one point. It was,
Both of my parents were involved. My brother was in it. It was crazy. But
Pikachu appeared.
But of course, watching that episode was what made me go, God damn, I've got to give this show another watch. And one of the things was the animation. It looks insanely good for an 80s Saturday morning cartoon. Mm-hmm. Most of the time. There are some moments where you're like, ooh, 80s, man, ooh. But they're few and far between in the first 2 seasons.
There's a weird thing with 80s cartoons and before where the colors don't pop as much as a modern cartoon. Have you noticed that?
I don't think that's an issue. I know what you mean. Yeah, for sure. I like that.
The colors are more. I don't know if pastel's the right word. They're kind of flatter, you know. It's like when you watch classic Ninja Turtles as opposed to the 2003 Ninja Turtles, you know.
It's I guess it's grainier. It's more detailed. It's more tactile, I guess. You know, the new stuff looks very glossy and polished. This is not like that at all. This is dirty, sketchy.
It's a bit fuzzier, I think, is what I'm trying to get at. Colors.
It looks like the comic books of the time. It looks like a comic book but animated of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfect with this material because it's Ghostbusters and it's more kind of science fiction superhero than it is traditional Saturday morning cartoon fare anyway. What'd you think of the animation though, overall? In this episode in particular?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty serviceable. I mean, there weren't any huge action sequences going on, so it's not like the animators really had a huge chance to show off at all. But I thought that what we got was pretty good.
This is not one of the initial... Because initially they sent the show out to Japan to get animated. And I think this was in the intermediary period where they were going to stop doing that. This was we're still putting a lot of money into this and into animating it well, but not as much as before. So this isn't one of the high-end, pinnacle... But it's up there. It's right on the cusp of good quality, better than your typical 80s cartoon animation.
I never asked you, what did you think about the animation in the South Park episode?
terrible, awful. No, it's two-dimensional. No, it's great. It's wonderful. We talked about the fire. I mean, that was close enough.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
But what did you? So one thing I also like about this is that you've got the Ghostbusters, the very well-maintained consistency of the Ghostbusters universe there, but you've also got the Christmas Carol story. And I think that it's a pretty well-told, straight-laced version of the Christmas Carol with one massive oversight. But before I mention what that oversight is, what did you think of Scrooge and all of the Christmas Carol stuff they threw in?
I didn't care too much for Scrooge the way he was portrayed in the episode.
Okay, why?
Because Scrooge traditionally, and I know that he wasn't like a major facet of the episode. Like the plot kind of revolves around him.
But he's the closest thing we have to a villain, though.
Well, the plot kind of revolves around him, but he's not really in the episode all that much for the runtime. So I understand he's not like super fleshed out or whatever. But Scrooge is kind of a complicated character, you know. And
sure. He
has to be like my favorite version is the fucking the one from the 50s. God, I can't remember the guy's name because I've been drinking. But that guy, he plays him really well.
Don't drink booze, kid. Don't drink booze in podcasts. It doesn't go well. No, it's great. We're having a great time.
Is it something Sim, like Alistair Sim or something?
I don't know. The version of Scrooge I'm most familiar with is Bill Murray.
Oh well. Anyway,
not even actual Scrooge.
But to play Scrooge right, it's one of those weird type of characters where he has to be really grumpy and unlikable, but kind of likable at the same time, you know, so that his redemption makes sense, you know. But in this, I felt he was a bit too odd word to use under the circumstances, cartoonishly evil, you know.
Okay, yes, that's the oversight I was going to mention. They basically
if he had a mustache, he would have been twirling it.
This was basically like, you know when they do like what if the Nazis won World War II, like what if scenario, like there's that show on right now called The Man in the High Castle. That's how they play this, where it's like if Scrooge didn't change the night the spirits visited him, Christmas would have been killed forever for everyone. The holiday would have been killed. He would have scorched it out. And I guess the idea is that he was so rich and influential that he could have just ostensibly taken over the world with his story of defeating the ghosts himself. Because, I mean, that's the only way he could have played it. He couldn't have told them what actually happened. Because he doesn't even know. And they would have believed him even less.
Yeah, it was kind of a dick move anyway, because he was taking credit for what the Ghostbusters did, you know?
Yeah, but they wouldn't have believed him if he would have been like 4 random dudes from the future showed up and captured the ghosts.
Well, he didn't know they were from the future.
I mean, he probably would have assumed.
They didn't even know they were in the past. Like, that exchange never happened.
But because neither of them knew they couldn't figure out what the other one's deal was. I think that made it all the funnier. Like when Scrooge pays them for busting the ghosts, and he tosses them the old English shilling, and Venkman's like, "Are you out of your mind? Do you know what our services cost?" And Ray's like, Peter, this is a mint condition English shilling, old timey. And he's like, "Oh, that'll do fine." It's great. It's moments like that I'm like, these guys are thinking. Like they're writing a very funny, like the dialogue is very clever kind of show. Like this isn't all just Slimer like sliming Peter. Like there's more to it than that. But
I enjoyed that exchange.
But the impact that Scrooge has on the future and his characterization is definitely very unrealistic and fucking bizarre and totally whacked out and out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think that it's kind of the point, and I do think that it's funny.
It's not even so much a problem for me, like the impact he has on the future, because I guess they had to have something go awry when they got back to the future in order for them to get tipped off by the fact that they had gone back in time.
Well, I would have been more interested if the story never would have been written, and that would have more specifically been the thing that killed Christmas. Because the way they play it, it's more that Scrooge wrote his fucked up version that implies that Christmas is a fucking forceful dickhead who's just trying to make you love it.
Yeah, well,
And
that's the weird thing about the episode is at this point we didn't even know that the Charles Dickens novel was a thing in this universe.
yeah,
So
that's the weird thing.
assumedly, the way things worked in the Ghostbusters universe was that Scrooge got visited by the three spirits, had a change of heart, told his story to Charles Dickens, who apparently he knew, and then Charles Dickens wrote it down as a book. Or Charles Dickens doesn't exist in this universe, and
And
Scrooge wrote a different version of the book originally.
yeah,
Uh,
I would think that the former is true. That that Scrooge had a change of heart and told Dickens' story, or the idea is that because Scrooge has the change of heart, he gives up all his money and just takes on a new identity and just becomes a writer and becomes Charles Dickens. Except that doesn't work either because I think Charles Dickens was rich too. But who knows? It's weird though because you're right. It isn't until the very last scene that Winston finally goes, I always thought all of that was just a story. And it's like, yeah, so did I. Like, what the fuck? Because the Ghostbusters make pop culture references constantly. And that's why
I can buy the Ghostbusters living in a universe where the Christmas Carol really happened. Like, fine, whatever.
yeah,
That story
I mean,
fits
especially if the story did actually get written. And this is just like and it was just based on a real thing that they happened to go back in time to.
But that's ultimately the problem, is that it's not very well explained, I don't think.
No, I think it's okay, though. I think the biggest problem is that the time travel doesn't make any sense, and that they don't explain Scrooge's deal enough. Like, and I think it's supposed to be like your stereotypical version. Like, they're like, we're not trying to paint our own uniquely deep version of Scrooge here. We are trying to use the archetypical cartoonish version that you're familiar with, like from the fucking Mickey Christmas Carol, and then tell a Ghostbusters story with that. And I think that's okay. I think it works well. I think it has they get a lot of comedy mileage out of it, like the English shilling thing I mentioned.
Well, they're assuming that their audience is already familiar with the story. They're assuming that the kids watching
who the fuck isn't? I mean, so I think that's a fair assessment.
They're assuming that the kids watching their cartoon are already aware of the fucking story. They're like, hey, these kids have already seen that episode of the Flintstones. It's fine.
Right. Yeah, that's another good. Yeah, it's another good one to pull.
So they just assume that you're already intimately familiar with why Scrooge is so Scroogey.
Yeah. So, I guess where we can go to then is what they ultimately try to do to fix it. So what happens is they go back to the future, and it turns out that because Scrooge didn't have a change of heart, he wrote a book just called A Christmas Humbug by Ebenezer Scrooge, and it's a
terrible title.
Oh yeah, I think that's the point though, because when Winston reads it out loud on the street, he's like, A Christmas Humbug by Ebenezer Scrooge. Like, he's like, what the fuck?
Scrooge reads it and he's like, I'm quite fond of that title.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to go, this guy's a fucking idiot and clearly senile. Everybody in the world reads the book and goes, oh, fuck Christmas right in its stupid ass.
Yeah, he must be senile, actually. That's a good point about the Christmas Carol story in general, because a normal non-senile person who goes through the experience he went through would just wake up the next morning and think, well, that was an odd dream I had.
Exactly, yeah. Unless you're in the Ghostbusters universe, in which case it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I meant to mention this before. We'll get back to the end of it in a second. And I know this is, again, we're going pretty long, but again, there's more to unpack in these two Christmas specials than I think either of us anticipated. I like that they just get thrown into the middle of the Scrooge story happening, and it's not like there's any weird build-up. Like, it's not like in the present, before they go back in time, they're like watching A Christmas Carol on TV or anything. Yeah, they're talking about Christmas, and Venkman's going on about how he's like, ugh, I'm not really into this. I don't really care. Fuck it. But it's not like A Christmas Carol is specifically mentioned. And I think in a lesser cartoon or a lesser kid show, it would have been. You know what I mean? Like, they would have been watching it on TV, and then they would have gone back in time, and somebody would have gone, oh my god, we're in A Christmas Carol. What? No, it's very, like, it's more natural than that. They come upon the disturbance, they go back in time, they just think that they're in, like, an old-timey town, and then they try to leave. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, another plot hole is why the fuck do they take their proton packs with them?
I don't know. Were they just in the car because they just came from doing a job or whatever?
Well, yeah, yes. Well, they had just come from doing a job, but why do they take the proton packs with them to go get a phone? Like to go look for a phone? Like, why would you take the extra weight? Like, just in the off chance that you bump into a ghost.
I guess that is the reason. I mean, which to be fair, in their universe, isn't that crazy of a concern? So
sure, but also, who's paying you? I mean, I guess they do get paid. So I guess they get paid off. So I guess because they're in their universe, it pays off.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I liked that a Christmas Carol was just happening when they come upon it. The ghost of Jacob Marley just flies out through the window, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Egon's getting the PKE readings, and he's like, "Oh my god." And that's when they go up, and they just come upon the ghost just surrounding Ebenezer Scrooge, and they're just like, "All right, guys, time to go to work." And the theme song kicks in. It's perfect. And the ghosts are like, "What are you doing?"
They see the three ghosts entering Scrooge's house, which it's weird that they're all coming at the same time because they're supposed to come like hours apart from each other. But whatever, it's a kid's show.
Yeah.
So they catch him and they put him in the trap. Then we have the exchange between them and Scrooge, and then they go back to the future, and the future's fucked up. And
I got really annoyed that everybody kept saying humbug. Like instead of saying Merry Christmas, you say bah humbug.
Yeah.
Like every time somebody says Christmas, like every time Egon says Christmas, Janine goes humbug. And there was one joke that I thought that paid off with where he says Christmas. She goes, humbug, and he does it again, Christmas, humbug, and he's like, fascinating. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, because it's Egon calling attention to the fact that, like, this is weird.
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was fun.
Let's see. Yeah, maybe the idea is that, like, humbug was, like, a normal part of, like, the vernacular pre the Scrooge story happening.
I guess.
And, like, in the version of the universe where Charles Dickens wrote the good book, it fell out of favor because of its association with Scrooge or something.
Oh, okay. All right. You know what? You made it make way more sense than I thought, and I think they thought when they wrote it. Because I just
I'm sure that wasn't their thought process. That's just the way I interpret it.
Yeah, no, that must be what happened, though, because it just comes off as like, well, we don't say Merry Christmas because we have this magically induced hatred of Christmas by Scrooge. You'd almost think that Scrooge was a demon of some kind, or like a ghost who would like put a spell on everybody to hate Christmas. But he just wrote a book about why Christmas sucks and about how awesome he is. So I guess the magic is his writing. I guess Scrooge is just a really great writer, just really good. Just has a very good command of narrative.
Well, it basically boiled down to like, yeah, these three ghosts came to my house, but they were pussies, and I beat them up, and then, yeah. And somehow that makes like the whole world go, fuck Christmas.
Yeah, I'd love to know what he said he did in the story. Because when we find out about it, like, I love how it's just some street vendor just like selling books. Just like, come get your copy of a Christmas book that's been around for hundreds of years. And that's how the Ghostbusters find out about it.
Why does he, and by extension everybody else, know who the three ghosts are? Because in the Scrooge story, Jacob Marley doesn't say, you will be visited by the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas present and the ghost of Christmas future. He just says, you'll be visited by three spirits. And they never got to introduce themselves because the Ghostbusters busted them as soon as they came in the door. So, like, as far as he knew, they could have been any three ghosts. And it's pretty apparent that everybody... And it's pretty apparent that everybody who read the book knows who they were supposed to be, because when you go back to the present, or the past technically, because it was in the 80s, they're all like,
don't start doing that, because you're gonna confuse the shit out of me.
Everybody, the one girl is like, everybody knows that story because Scrooge defeated the Christmas ghost.
Why does she care though? Like, it happened hundreds of years ago. Like, why are you educating these random idiots on the street? Like, who the fuck cares? Like, that would be like if I was walking along the street and I was like, why is there this old man who everybody's talking about with Christmas, and somebody was like, you don't know the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, and they were just selling copies of A Christmas Carol on the street? Like, that's so weird.
You think they're like evangelists in this universe? They go door to door. Have you heard the good news about Ebenezer Scrooge?
But there must be. That must be who she is, because otherwise, who the hell is she?
Yeah. What's her deal?
I don't know. Maybe she's a ghost. But so the other major component of this is because they fucked up, they then have to fix it. So they're like, and I love when the pen drops, because they go back to the containment unit and they're like, "Oh, Egon, did you dump those ghosts already?" And because they know they have to go put them back in the past, that way history can be corrected. And they hope that Egon hasn't dumped the ghosts yet. And he's like, "No, of course I did. I just did it." And they're like, "Oh no!" And then they go to the containment unit viewing port, which is something that's only in the cartoon and in no other versions of Ghostbusters, because it doesn't really make any sense. And they see the three ghosts just floating in the containment unit.
And so the idea is that this is a big deal because they don't have any way of getting them out of the containment unit. So I'm assuming that this is prior to another episode, one of the episodes that I saw on the DVD where, like, they went inside the containment unit. This is the first time they ever do that, I'm assuming?
This is the first time they go in. They've sent Slimer in before, but they've never gone in themselves.
Okay, so Egon goes in.
They know that it's like a world in there, that there's like people walking around and shit. They just don't know, or they just don't know if they can go in and get out.
Yeah, the containment unit basically works like the big sphere from the end of season 8 of Doctor Who, where all the ghosts are being stored, you know?
Yeah,
basically,
that's a good way to look at it, exactly.
It basically functions like that.
Right. So Egon is like, "Listen, I know how to get in there. It's crazy dangerous, and it probably won't work. But it's a shot, and it's the only shot. So I'm going to do that." And they're like, "Well, okay, what if it doesn't work?" And he's like, "Okay, you're going to have to go back in time through the portal and pretend to be the three ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and try to give Scrooge the change of heart that the ghost did, in case I can't get them back there in time." So Peter, Winston, and Ray then go back through the disturbance, dress up in crazy outfits to try and look like crazy spirits, and do a low-budget version of A Christmas Carol with some rope, by putting Venkman in a blonde wig and a tutu, and using a Viewmaster to show Scrooge pictures of his school and like other things and other places from his past. So that way he has like I'm going through different memories and I'm remembering things in my tragic past. Oh no, my heart. Oh, I feel emotions. Number one, where the fuck did they get pictures of Scrooge's school? Maybe it's just supposed to be a school and Scrooge just like imposing it on himself, because Peter's doing a shit job of being the ghost of Christmas past.
The Dickens novel must be much more detailed in this version of the universe, because they know where this guy went to school. They apparently have pictures of, the school is the only picture we see, but assumedly they must have pictures of his whole life, because it's the whole Christmas past shtick.
Right.
I don't know, man.
I also love how the version of the book that Scrooge puts out, it must be his picture on the cover, because he looks like, that's how they figure out that it's Scrooge, is that the Ghostbusters look at the cover of the book and they go, "Oh my god, that's the guy who we helped." And it's like, well, yeah, I guess that's a photograph of him then, which makes sense. There were cameras in Scrooge's time, right?
And he must have been Ebenezer Scrooge, because the title kind of gives it away.
Well, his name is bigger than the fucking title of the book on the cover, which I guess is supposed to be like his characterization.
I don't know exactly what year the Scrooge story is supposed to be set in, so I don't know if they had cameras or not.
They say it in this, and I forget. I think it's the 1870s, though, so there would have been cameras. It wouldn't have been a color picture, though, like that was.
And would there have been cameras when he was a boy going to school? I don't know.
No, that's fucking weird. But presumably those would be pictures taken like, maybe they in the present went to Scrooge's like school if it was still standing. No, that would have been in England then. Fuck that. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. If you poke holes in this, a lot of it doesn't really necessarily hold up structurally, narratively, but the absurdity is part of the fun.
they would not have had time to take these pictures.
No, yeah.
And they wouldn't have had any way of finding these pictures because this is in a pre-internet world.
Well, there was a web, but it obviously wasn't what it is now.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Go back to the 80s, look at their shitty version of the internet, and you try to find pictures of Scrooge's school.
But aside from all the logical inconsistencies, what did you think of that plot element? They had to, like, what did you think of, my question that I wrote down is, how does Venkman look in a tutu?
Oh, pretty good, you know. Why he's going along with it is kind of a mystery to me, because...
He's so not into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the future that they wound up accidentally creating it fits along with him just fine. I don't know why he even cares, because he's all.
Well, he acknowledges that they it's their fault that a massive part of history is gone, so and he doesn't care. But he acknowledges that it is a problem that has to be fixed. So, and that's what makes Venkman a compelling, likable character, is that he may bitch and moan and act like he doesn't give a shit about anything, but at the end of the day, he'll step up.
But, yeah, I thought the concept was great. The concept of them having to pretend to be the ghosts is fucking genius. But it's just once you start examining it, it kind of falls apart.
Well, how they do it is bizarre. Although I don't know how else they could have done it. Like, maybe it would have been better if they would have, like... Wouldn't it have been funny if they would have gotten, like, a filmed version of A Christmas Carol and, like, showed the path, like, the childhood scenes of that Scrooge and, like, acted like that was supposed to be him? I don't know. There was some logical inconsistencies, but I think the cleverness and the humor of what they did have was, like, worked well. Like, I thought the Viewmaster thing was really funny. And Venkman, like, ties him to a wheelchair and, like, runs him around the room really fast to make it seem like he's flying. Like, I think that's really funny.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, I enjoyed the Viewmaster element. I love whenever I see one of those things in a movie or a TV show, because I used to have one of those. And it's like, I forgot they exist until I see them in something.
Definitely. It's hilarious. And then, of course, Egon goes into the containment unit. The suit that he's wearing has been, like, used a lot in other Ghostbusters stuff. Like, people love that suit. It's cool looking. It's big and bulky, and it's like an astronaut suit. They go in there. You, of course, see a bunch of ghosts that they'd busted in the series prior to that, and some that they hadn't, because they aired them out of order.
I saw Penis Nose from the first episode. He was one of the few things I remembered from that drunken stupor.
The one that I remembered the most was Sanheen. He's the pumpkin-headed dude. He's one of the big popular bad guys from the show.
Clever name, very clever.
Oh, you got okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Of course I get it,
but anyway, so Egon gets them. He gets them out. After being chased by the ghosts. One other clever bit of writing that I liked was that Slimer the whole time is struggling not to get sucked into the containment unit, because Janine, like, bolts and abandons him to go run upstairs to watch what's going on, and Slimer's like, bitch, I'm stuck here because I'm gonna get sucked in if I cross the beam. I thought that was really clever. In a less smartly written show, maybe they wouldn't have even thought of that, like, thought to put that in. But I don't know, I thought it was nice that they threw that in and they remembered that would happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, so just to wrap this up, we spent probably as much time on this, if not longer, than the South Park thing, and there's not as much complexity to it, so we should definitely wrap this up. Egon gets them out, brings them back to the past, thankfully in time, because Venkman and Ray are pretty sure that this is... I keep dropping my phone, fuck. That this is not going to work, that the Scrooge is not going to be totally convinced by just them, although... They do get enough of the Christmas spirit across to him that, one, Peter kind of teaches himself the meaning and a love, the meaning of Christmas and a love for Christmas, and why it has its place and why people like to celebrate it. When he says to Scrooge, you know, you can bitch and moan about being denied connection with your family and attention and love by others all you want, but just being sad and depressed this time of year isn't going to make it any better. So you might as well just enjoy, you know? I like that. It definitely accurately captures the feeling of Christmas. I would say more subtly and more cleverly than the end. We can talk about that in a second, though. And then, of course, the ghosts return. There's that great moment where Egon comes through the window, and he's like, Ebenezer Scrooge, on this night you'll be visited by 3 spirits. And he's like, oh no, 3 more spirits? And then he goes, the first will come at 1, the second at 2, the third, whenever. I thought that was really funny. Because he's like, I don't know, man, I'm done. And then the ghosts whisk him away, and they're like, all right, well, let's take it from the top. And there was a joke I didn't get, where the ghost of Christmas past, or present, whichever, was like, as my brother Christmas Future would say, let's take it from the top. And I was like, is that a Christmas Carol joke that I don't get? Like, what does that mean? Did you get that?
I thought past said that, because I thought she said my brothers, and then named both of them, but maybe I'm mistaken.
But what is that a reference to? I didn't get that.
I don't understand why it's supposed to be funny either. I'm just saying I think Pat said it.
Okay, sure. Well, then the big bearded one teleports them back to the present, back into the firehouse. They're all relieved to have saved Christmas. Yay, Christmas is saved. Janine isn't saying humbug anymore. Great, wonderful. My ears are spared. They're sharing some delightful, vague blue liquid. I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know if it's supposed to be eggnog or fucking antifreeze or whatever. And they're all like, oh, it's crazy. I thought that was just a story, which is when we, find that out. And then you hear, on Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen. Santa's outside, and they're all like, whoa, my God. And then somebody, I think it's Peter, goes, nah, can't be. And then he goes, well, why not? And I think that was, again, that's your, well, it's Christmas, so sure, you could be all pessimistic and questioning and mean-spirited, just like you, Dylan, poking holes in this fucking plot of this episode. Or you can just shut up and enjoy and take some enjoyment from the season, which I think is. I mean,
I for one hate when a Christmas special shoehorns Santa Claus in at the last minute. And,
I didn't like that either. I thought it was forced and bizarre.
They don't give Santa Claus anything to do. Like, if he had a shotgun and was shooting Christmas critters, I'd be all about it,
I find it interesting that ours had such bizarre parallels, like in terms of the Christmas tropes they were trying to hit. Although they were 2 different kind of types of Christmas stories that they were trying to capture. The Woodland Critters Christmas special is like your Rankin Bass thing, while this is obviously a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
So I think interesting variety there. But yeah, I didn't love the Santa thing. One issue that
2 different flavors of Christmas, I guess you could say.
Yeah, because they're both definitely commentaries on how people feel about Christmas and how Christmas has impacted our modern society. But I obviously the South Park one is darker, a lot more. I don't know if subtler is the word, but definitely more poignant. Whereas Ghostbusters is a little bit more kind of general, more kind of motivations for characters and arcs for different characters and much more kind of wholesome than South Park and leaves us in a much more wholesome place, I feel, with Santa maybe being real and Peter believing in the love of Christmas and all that, and also wearing a tutu, so what's not to love?
And a distinct lack of satanic Christmas critters.
Which is bizarre, since you would think that Ghostbusters would have that, you'd think they would have that in Stroves.
I really want the Ghostbusters Ghost Rider crossover,
Oh yeah, for sure. Marvel did Ghostbusters comics in the 80s, so it couldn't have happened, but it could have happened. Anyway. All right, D. So I'm glad we both ended up enjoying each special though, because I didn't know how I was going to feel about the South Park one. I didn't know how you were going to feel about the Ghostbusters one. So I'm glad we both ended up enjoying them. I would assume that you walk away enjoying the South Park one more, and I walk away enjoying the Ghostbusters one more, because that's how it breaks down for me.
Well, yeah, the Woodland Critter Christmas has been a favorite of mine for quite some time, so naturally.
And this has been one of my favorite episodes of The Real Ghostbusters ever since I binged it. Like, this is one of the standout, clever episodes. Anyway, So I do believe that is going to do it for motherfucking Christmas. I would say that both of these specials were pretty motherfucking Christmassy. Would you agree, D?
Indeed. We've been looking for more concepts for things we could do on episodes of this show. Maybe the whole episode of South Park, episode of Ghostbusters thing is a direction we could go into.
Sure. We'd have to...
We could call it Park Busters or something.
No. South Park Gets Real.
I get it. I don't know if I like it.
I love it. I'm calling this episode that.
Damn it. No, man. It's motherfucking Christmas. Roman numeral 3.
Subheading, South Park Gets Real.
Damn it.
Alright, what if it's South Park Gets Real Motherfucking Christmassy? What if that's the title?
I like that one. Yeah.
That's the title then. Well, South Park and the real Ghostbusters got real motherfucking Christmassy. So, and we did too. I had a good time, man. It is Christmas Eve for me right now. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. If you celebrate it, if you don't, I mean, you might as well. You might as well. It's everywhere.
It is Christmas Eve for me as well now. So
there you go. I gotta get up in like 8 hours to finish my Christmas shopping. Don't know I live a charmed life. And I've also got to edit this podcast, and I got to finish editing through the shot glass. Somebody please send me back in time and have Peter Venkman put a tutu on to try and convince me to love Christmas again, because right now I'm not loving it. I got too much shit to do on it.
One of the refreshing aspects of being broke is that nobody expects me to get them anything for Christmas, so I've had a pretty chill holiday season so far.
Aren't you fucking lucky, you? Fucking surf you. Anyway, so next week we'll be doing X2 as we promised, as we initially were going to do this week, but of course we decided to do this for motherfucking Christmas, so X2 will be next time. So if you want to rewatch it, fine. If not, fine as well. So do whatever.
That will also be the last Demons from Outer Space episode for the year 2016.
It will be, yes. So we'll be back with you next week for that, when the X-Men unite and 2016 finally fucking dies. So until next time, everyone, you can like us on Facebook as always, Godzilla Odyssey SOS. Follow me on Twitter at Bill_Worcester and all the other shit. We're so good at pimping we're so good at pimping ourselves out, aren't we?
Also be on the lookout, because at some point in the near future, hopefully, we'll be recording our next episode of SOS, which will, of course, be our big blowout review of Rogue One. Mm-hmm. Which I guess will be a new SOS Christmas or end-of-the-year tradition, since last year we had the big Force Awakens review.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, Disney's decided Star Wars is a Christmas thing now, so...
Yeah, I think they want everybody to forget the holiday special ever existed. So now they're like, now they can associate it with Force Awakens and Rogue One.
See, you'd think that would make it more obvious, though.
You would think, but I don't know.
People are dumb, though.
And I assume we'll probably do the whole end-of-the-year wrap-up thingy that we usually do on SOS 2, won't we?
I don't know how we're going to do that this year. We'll find out. We'll either do them as we used to.
It all depends on when... It all depends on when we get things recorded.
Yeah, honestly, that's the thing. If we do the Rogue One thing early next week, then we can record the New Year's special the weekend after, or maybe just early the following week. But we'll have to see. Because I'd rather give Rogue One its own night. Otherwise, we're gonna be so fucking tired, like you and I are right now. So we should definitely avoid that. But all right, till next time, everyone. I'm Bill Worcester, aka Zazubaar.
I'm Super DM64.
And I forgot that we had a not half bad sign-off for the show like a year ago that I just forgot, which is, it's a podcast because I see nothing, Colonel Hogan. Nothing!
Oh, yeah. We did used to say that.
Because it's a podcast. And you say things.
It is a podcast, yeah.